Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you are joining for the first time, this is part of our e-commerce series for which we meet every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, and we pick one topic related to e-commerce, and we always have a very exciting panel that is willing to share their insights and wisdom. So we are going to start with everybody's intro, and after that, we are going to jump right into the topic. Chris, can I ask you to introduce yourself if you don't mind?
Yes, thank you, Sam. I am Chris Harrington, the president and COO at Gen Alpha Technologies. We equip equipment manufacturers with the tools and services they need to sell online. So really wonderful to be here, looking to share some experience, not just with current clients, but even my former life in my manufacturing days. So thanks, Sam.
It's going to be so exciting. Thank you so much for being here, Chris. Ben, can I ask you to introduce yourself next?
Absolutely. Thanks, Sam. My name is Ben Searcy. I am one of the co-founders of Govee, and we are a mass customer mobilization platform. So what we do is help you get more benefit out of your customers by providing them more benefit back. So this conversation today is right up my alley.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Ben. Damon, can I ask you to introduce yourself next?
Thanks, Sam. Damon Pistulka, Exit Your Way. What we're doing is helping manufacturing and e-commerce businesses grow the value of their businesses so the owners can exit when they want. Yep, that's what we do.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Damon. Kira, I'm actually going to ask you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. So I'm Kira. We do business process automation for manufacturers and not only via Zoho tools and Microsoft Dynamics tools.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Kira. And now we are going to dig into the topic. So obviously for today, we are going to be talking about customer retention. And customer retention is always exciting because you don't have to work as hard as you have to when you are acquiring new customers. But still, it's not an easy process. You still require a lot of thought process in terms of, how to retain those customers. So, Chris, I am actually going to start with the sort of the process and the steps involved in retaining customers. If you have any specific stories that you might be able to share, that will provide some context. But share your perspective on process and steps of customer retention.
Sure, Sam. I think I'm definitely going to address from the B2B side of things because that's where I have the greatest experience, and maybe some will address the B2C side. But, when I think about B2B companies, they are really visiting your website because they have to. It's their job. So I think sometimes the best way to think about customer retention is to think about how you can provide the least path of resistance to help companies do their job. They are really going to your website, during working hours from 8 to 5 to leverage the solutions you have to really buy from you because they have a problem to solve at work. And I think as we think about all of the ways in which we remove roadblocks and create that path of least resistance, we should really think about 3 different strategies. We need to be easy to do business with, right? You've got to give customers confidence that they're getting the right thing, and all the information that you have available is accurate. So again, easy to use, give the buyer confidence, and make sure that there's accuracy with your information. I would say that those are 3 priorities. They're not the only priorities, but definitely those 3. Now, if I were going to jump into, some stories as I think about current customer engagements and their customers, and I also think about my past life, one of the things that was really important to customers was keeping their equipment operating. Equipment uptime is really critical. So if we think about the end user or the customer's priority, they need to keep that equipment productive. So as a business, to keep that customer retention, you have to keep finding ways to make sure that you're helping them keep their equipment productive.
Yep.
And the best way to do that is to have the best customer service practices, helping them find information quickly. I would say don't devalue the differentiator that e-commerce can provide in providing a great customer experience, and even providing tools like chat so that you can be engaging with a client while they're on your website and they might need some information. So really, speed and transparency and data to very quickly get them to their end goal so that they can get the products that they need to keep the equipment running is one example of a customer retention strategy that I know my clients have worked on. I also know that a second one that's really important is total cost of ownership. Okay, so every customer wants the lowest total cost of ownership. And the way that you will retain them is to make sure that you continue to deliver on the things that will help them with that lowest cost of ownership. So, creating loyalty programs that reward customers for the business that they do with you can be a great example of how they can leverage a better price from you as the provider. And with all the customer service activities you do to help them keep their equipment running, that combination is going to help them keep the lowest cost of ownership. So when I think about, loyalty programs, we had a loyalty program back at my Bucyrus days in manufacturing, and it had a combination of two factors. It was how many equipment did they purchase from us? So if you looked at their overall fleet, was it 90% our equipment or 50-50, which meant that they were giving 50% to the other guy and 50% to us. So that was one. And then in the fleet that they owned of ours, how much business were they doing with us on our estimated market potential on that equipment? So in the aftermarket parts and service, were they giving us 75% of that pie, or were they giving us 25% and using jobbers or going to other resources to get? And the combination of their loyalty to us determined the level of discount we gave to them. And that level of discount factored into that total cost of ownership calculation. So these are ways that we were very transparent with our customers to help them understand how they achieve their loyalty pricing, so that they would understand and know how they could move in a direction. But that transparency helped in the retainment of that customer for the long term. And it encouraged them to do the right things that we wanted them to do to be a loyal customer long into the future. So I hope that's a good description of, kind of the way that I think about customer retention and some of the priorities, and then some things that we've implemented in the past and that I've seen our customers implement as well, all on the B2B side really.
Yeah, I love the way you keep emphasizing on the least path of resistance. And I think that is really key for e-commerce. The point that I really appreciated in your conversation, especially when you are talking about these expensive equipments, you really need to deliver on your TCO. So I am actually going to have a follow-up question for you. When
Sure.
you are working on these expensive equipments, sometimes it could be very tricky when you have to balance the expectation in the long term versus what you have to sell today. We all know how sales works, especially for the expensive things when we are trying to sell. So obviously our goal is going to be, when we are trying to sell, is to get foot in the door. That we all do. I don't know if anybody's going to deny that. So let's say if you are trying to get foot in the door, and after that you have to deliver on your promises, and then you have the reality check that, what, these things really cost money. So in your experience, how do you balance both of these in terms of, getting foot in the door, but at the same time managing the expectation over the long term to make sure that they really understand that this is going to be slightly more expensive than you initially expected?
Yeah, I think you have to be really tied into their organization, because you have to be able to pull in the performance of their equipment, their machinery, or whatever it is, because that's a factor to the equation. Price is just one factor. When they chose your equipment, they were choosing your equipment, that expensive machinery that was it's a capital asset, that they went through a lot of due diligence to make sure they were going to select the right solution. And a lot of the solution is about the performance they're going to get from that solution, and their belief in you as the manufacturer to deliver on the promises of the aftermarket service and support. So it's a combination of, was their machinery available for the period of time that you said, and was it able to meet their production requirements? And once you have that factor in, that's how you can sell that TCO. If you're just justifying the cost aspect, it will be challenging, and you will suffer, especially if you're a premium provider of products. And most of us would hope that we are on that end of things, right? So you really have to be tied in. You have to have a good relationship, and you got to understand how your machinery is performing on that within their operation.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Chris. So Ben, I'm actually going to move to you. So I'm pretty sure you are going to have some B2C insight here, and you are going to be talking about how different challenges are there in terms of B2C, especially if you are going to describe the process and the steps as they relate to customer retention.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. Funnily enough, it's not that different in the B2B and the B2C space. I mean, probably 95% of it crosses over. I mean, it ultimately ends up, do you have happy customers? And, how you go about that may be slightly differently. The way I'd like to start actually is, and this may or may not be completely obvious to everybody on the panel, but first and most important thing is understand your data. What is your retention rate as is? What is your churn rate? What are your metrics? Because without having that to start with, and I'm more looking at it from a fix and an optimization standpoint, you don't know what to fix or what to optimize. But at a broader level, there's a couple of things that I think are important to note, and then I'll pop into a couple of stories. This came out from the Chamber of Commerce a few years ago. But most businesses have about 25% invisible churn, meaning someone came to your website, someone came to your business, whatever it was, they bought something once and never returned. They call it invisible because you didn't really earn that customer. You don't know who that customer is. They just kind of showed up, they bought, and they left. A coffee shop does that. A lot of e-com sites do that. But what they also found is by reducing that invisible churn by 5%, meaning taking it from 25% down to 20, you can increase the profitability of your company or your business by 95%. And the reason for that, as we all know, is loyal customers tend to buy more. I think in last week's panel, someone commented on the 80-20 rule. 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers. So if you can increase that 20% of your customers, you're going to have a much more profitable business. In terms of how to go about doing it, I mean, there's hundreds of different ways. Loyalty programs are great. Customer feedback loop, I think, is critical. I was involved. This one of the stories. I was involved in the project a couple of years back, and one of the things that we tried to do is get businesses to immediately on checkout. This is in e-com and in person. Have someone provide feedback on their experience. Because I'm going to go for an overly simplistic example, but it was close enough to real that you'll get the point here. But the general idea is you come into a taco shop and have an experience. If I can ping you right away and say, how was your experience? and it was a good experience, that's great. And I can use that to ask for a referral later on. I can do anything. But if it's a bad experience, I have an immediate ability to address that problem. Oh, Ben was in the background. He was smoking a cigar and cigar ash got in my tacos. I didn't like it. Great. Now the business owner can jump in and fix that problem and then say, come back and have a better experience the second time. Not only have you, I mean, once a person has come to your business, especially in the e-com side or in the small business side of things, once they've come twice, they're much more likely to continue on as a loyal customer moving forward. And if you have addressed a negative experience, not only have you shown them that they matter to you, but you've also prevented a 1-star review or whatever it was going to be. And you've also solved the problem that don't hire Ben. He smokes too many cigars and gets it in the food all the time. So I do think customer feedback loops are good. You guys both mentioned setting expectations, which is great, so I won't jump into that. Again, there's 1,000 different ways of going about it, but one I've experienced before is, and I'm sure we all have, a little bit of surprise and delight. You bought item A, and you got just like a little thing in there. And for most people, it's as much as having a branded sticker. I mean, you can't get much better marketing than that. Like, here's your sticker with my brand on it, put it on your water bottle kind of thing. But people love that. There are multiple companies that I continuously purchase from because I'm curious what tiny little thing that cost them 4 cents they're going to throw in the bag when my order shows up. And beyond that, you can also just tap into things. I mean, man, we could talk about this for hours and hours, but you can tap into little things like personalization and aligning with missions. Tom's is a great example of this. A lot of people buy from Tom's because they align with the mission. Like, I need new shoes. Where am I going to go? The place that's going to give someone else new shoes also. That kind of thing, I think, is really interesting. And the last thing I'll say on this, and then hand it off, is I think we've talked about this in a different panel, but there's different names for it, but the napkin theory or the pen theory. The general idea is if you ask for something of someone and they provide it to you, they're more inclined to be loyal and work with you. They'll view you more favorably in the past. And I think it came because someone asked, they're at a conference table and they asked someone to slide them a napkin or something like that. But psychologically, there's a shift. So see what you can ask of your customers and, provide value back for the ask. But whatever it is, if they start taking action on your behalf, they're much more likely to stay long-term loyal customers. Of course, retaining those customers is key. And then they will, of course, spend more money with you over a longer period of time.
Okay, so amazing example, by the way. That taco example is brilliant. Okay, I absolutely love it. And you are so right that whether you are talking about giving favors or receiving favors, they both work equally well. People don't know how to utilize them really well. To really gain the trust with your customers. So thank you so much for that. And then the final thing I am going to mention, especially when it comes to B2C, especially when you talk about getting the feedback from your customers. In case of B2C, sometimes things may be out of your control because you are getting feedback, let's say, from your immediate customer. But that feedback may not be as relevant because you want to get feedback from your end consumers. So I remember my conversation with, Kara Golden. You guys know who Kara Golden is. What she had done is she literally printed her email on the product, and she actually wanted to engage with the end consumers because you could do a lot more things when you are engaging with your end consumers. And Ben, you actually do a lot of work, related to similar things where you are actually sort of bypassing that mediator, and that is going to be distributor, and you are trying to engage with the consumer, and then you have a lot of clout overall. What all you can do to bring the consumers, and then obviously your immediate customer is going to be excited about that if you can figure out how to win their customers.
That's exactly right. It's the more feedback you can get from whoever is actually using the product, or in the end is going to actually, I don't want to say the distributors don't matter, but the people who matter the most are the people who are going to buy it again. The faster you can get to them, the better. That's a really good point, Sam.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Ben. So, Damon, I'm actually going to move to you next. Okay. Do you have any specific stories that you might be able to share related to customer retention? Do you want to talk about the process and the steps?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll tell you a little story about customer retention, and it's not even e-commerce related, but I think it's relevant to a lot of equipment and more expensive items when they do it. I used to ride motorcycle an awful lot. And I mean, when I say an awful lot, I probably rode more in 1 year than a lot of people do in a lifetime. And what my dealership did for me is they actually asked me, well, how many miles are you going to ride in a month? And they would contact me on a weekly basis or I can't remember now. I don't have the bike anymore, and they would say, listen, next week you need to schedule and come in and do this. And now this was a BMW. They're very, very particular about the service and things like that. But the extra steps that they took, I drove that motorcycle almost 80,000 miles.
Oh, wow.
And it never in 80,000 miles stopped alongside the road. I was in the middle of wherever you can think of being in the middle of the United States and Canada. And I never once, not even a flat tire with that thing. Now, do you think I will ever buy a different motorcycle again from a different place? This is the kind of thing that if you can take this, and if you take this and put this into an e-commerce perspective, when I was thinking about talking about this, I go back to the simple things. And Chris has talked about this before. If you want to keep, in a B2B situation especially, you want to keep that customer and they've got critical equipment, have inventory.
Yep.
Very first thing.
Yep.
Have some inventory. The second thing is, and someone said it already earlier, have a chat function. And if that chat function doesn't work or it's not getting the job done, have a button to push and they can talk to somebody. I mean, these are the kind of things that you have to make it easy and convenient. And again, the accurate information, because the kind of things when I think about customer service, it is things like, yep, I can get what I need. And then the second thing is, how quickly can I get it? Because sometimes I don't care, but then sometimes I want someone to take that part and walk it to a plane, and I will meet it at the airport if I have to. And people that have been in those situations, you understand that if things are that important, that's how you transport things around. And being able to give people those, and when you talk about expensive equipment, right, we're talking about pieces of equipment that millions of dollars that stopped running and they need this. And, you will pay if you have to. And even in some cases, a customer service person or somebody will get on a plane with a piece and bring it to you if that's what you need. But those are the kind of things that when you're thinking about the overall customer retention strategy, started out in the e-commerce and be real strategic about, we have inventory, it's easy to get, and it's easy to escalate that support all the way up to the best support you can, that other people might think crazy, but if you can do it, you're going to really stand out amongst everyone else.
Okay, amazing. Love the example. And I think that is similar to what Chris mentioned about giving confidence that you can really deliver. So it's, and your example is right there. And the other thing, see, a lot of people are really talking about the customer service and the customer experience. And obviously, when you are trying to retain your customers, the customer experience and the customer service obviously is going to be extremely key. So now, Damon, I am actually going to have a follow-up fun question for you. So there are two ways companies like to handle this. Number one is going to be, okay, you always have the chat button and you can always reach out to somebody. But let's say if I am trying to reach out to a company, especially if it is going to be a complex equipment, typically they will require a lot of briefing before they can help me, right? Now, companies approach it in two ways. Number one, you are actually going to have a dedicated rep, meaning you don't have to go through the same thing and again, because you are getting hold of a guy who already understands your business, who already understands, what you are going through. That could be very convenient. But now this person is not always going to be available. So you can't expect them to be there 24/7. So, but in the other case, when you have the chat function, it could be a very, very, very frustrating experience. We all have gone through this, especially when we are talking about any complex device or, ERP systems or whatever. because you have to coach these guys, the customer service. So what approach would you recommend to businesses when they are trying to improve on their customer retention strategy using the customer service?
Well, I think it's something, and I'm pretty sure that Gen Alpha Technologies addresses this, is when you really have to start to understand your customer's history, right? And when you look at it, even, and not just from, I ordered this, because that's a standard. If you don't have it to where you can reorder the stuff you've ordered before, I think you're horrible. Just get it done, fix it. But when you talk about service and you talk about being able to contact somebody, from the customer end, all I care is I get my problem resolved. From the company end, you need to be able to document that, what that the customer has gone through before, so that if I'm the customer service person, or I'm the parts person, or I'm the technical support person, I have 6 other people around me. We're answering technical support questions for everyone. But when Sam calls me, I know Sam's company, and I go, Sam, what piece of equipment is it? What is the thing that we're working on? What issue is it? Is this the issue we're talking about? I mean, that's the kind of data that you need to collect and really make it easy for your support people to access. And then your support people don't need to know Sam's company. They don't need to know what Sam worked on last. They only need to know that the data that we have about it is relevant enough for me as a good support person. I can provide the appropriate support with that data. And those systems are the ones that I think that when you get into the higher end, more expensive, when you're talking about, things like we used to have in the factories, you talk about big lasers and CNC machines and all that kind of stuff. They need to be keeping track of the maintenance that you've had, or the support requests that you've had from them, and the conversations you've had with their support people, so that it can be accessed by the support people in the future. Otherwise, they're missing out on a great opportunity to be able to really, really give that customer what they need. Again, as Chris said, accurate information, convenience, and make it easy to solve their problems.
Okay, amazing. Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think those are great points, Damon. And I only wanted to add that I think this is where the relevance of integrations come into play as well. When you think about when a customer service person is answering a call from someone, they should be able to have their CRM system up and their customer facing tools like e-commerce up, so that if that customer has the e-commerce site open, is maybe looking at a digital drawing or something, but that customer service rep has all the detailed information at their fingertips: past history, current machines, what did they buy, what was their maintenance level, who last called on them. That will give the customer who's on the phone with them confidence that the other person on the line knows their business and knows what they're talking about. They may not be the person to solve the problem right there, but they're going to be packed. They're going to be so full of beneficial information in that call that customer is going to feel they're in good hands if it has to be passed to someone else. So I love what you had to say there, Damon.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Chris. So, Kira, I'm actually going to give you the opportunity to be able to share your story. And if you could share your insights in terms of the process and steps in terms of how you would approach the customer retention.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, it's difficult to add anything really insightful here, because I love all the points that have been mentioned. And basically connecting between different departments via technology, that's what we do every day. And the stories are unlimited. I would say, in the boring language, I would say the path to retain customers in both B2B and B2C is future-proof. Like, predict what they will need.
Yep.
And tell them what they don't know, be it trends or maybe how to maintain your equipment during the off season. And that will position you as the trusted advisor in the eyes of your B2C or B2B customers. And moreover, they will rely on you to tell them what the next steps are in growing their business with your help. So And then it's a different story how that information can be conveyed to the customers through communications. Of course, in B2C, the audience is huge, and reaching them is way more expensive than reaching B2B decision makers or your customers. But anyways, I think communications would be key. Even B2C, that can be, some messaging that is updated on your website. Is that a monthly newsletter you are sending to your customers? Again, taking into consideration what they bought before, or maybe what feedback they have provided you, segmenting your customers. Or you are communicating that information through your account managers if you are in the B2B space, or if you are just introducing the job of account manager for your really large clients. That's like the tactics of that future-proof communication. And the only story I can tell is on the B2B side. I used to work in the corporate world, in the services and banking, which is not always transferable to other industries. But when I saw that one of my manufacturing customers actually started doing QBRs, quarterly business reviews, with his biggest distributors and dealers, that just took the business to a different level, because an account manager was actually preparing for those meetings. He was going through all the data, through the information that you guys mentioned from different sources, and was coming proactively to those business owners, advising them on how they, as a manufacturer, could, guide their client to grow the business. And it was really simple for the client. Yes, I agree. Check box. And here you go, cross-sell, upsell, contract done. So I think that's a great way to approach.
Okay, amazing. Love the story. And obviously, if you are adding the real value overall with respect to these reviews, if you are providing real intel to your distributors, obviously that is going to help. But in my experience, when people do or follow these procedures just for the sake of it, when nobody's closing any business, sometimes that could be very overkill. So obviously, they need to be mindful in terms of that, you are really providing real intelligence, market intelligence. For example, let's say if you provide to your distributors that, hey, you know what, you need to go to, I don't know, man, maybe electrical vehicles, or maybe, in the aerospace industry, that's where the business is happening. Distributors are going to be really excited about it if they are actually able to close some deals. And your point about the B2B versus B2C, in case of B2C, obviously your the mass is going to be too much. You have to attack a lot more, but you have different challenges in case of your B2B, because you need to go deeper in terms of your intel. So when you are trying to help your customers, you need to understand, okay, which part is wearing out, so that I can send my alert to the customer. And if you don't have the specific word, if you are actually sending the wrong alert, that could actually fire back. So thank you so much for those insights. So the next segment that we are going to approach is going to be related to measurement. Obviously, when you have a small team, you don't probably have to worry about the measurement. But unless you measure the customer retention, it could be very hard to enforce the strategies that are really going to work as far as the customer retention goes. So, Chris, I'm actually going to come to you. What have you seen in terms of creating sort of the framework that allows you to measure the customer retention? The customers are really being retained, and you are not doing quarterly review just for the sake of it.
Yeah, and I do think Ben mentioned this one already, but I'll just piggyback to add a little bit more from my perspective. But I think customer retention rate is the most obvious one, right? So if you had 100 customers on January 1 and you have 120 at December 31st, and 30 of those are new customers, that means you retained 90. So you got a 90% customer retention rate, right? So just the quick calculation. That's an obvious, maybe important one that anybody out there should be measuring. The other one that I wrote down that I think is really important is to look at the number of revived customers. Okay. So, if you have customers who didn't do business with you in the last 12 months, but now they have done business with you, and maybe they've even repeated that business. That's a customer that you've revived. And that could tell you that your customer retention strategies, of course, are working. So the two that I really, prepped for this call that I thought were the most important to measure for this topic were really those two. Make sure that at the end of the year or a period of time, you're looking back and saying, how many of our existing customers do we still have? And then of those customers that we had and we lost, how many did we get back? I think those are critical to this type of strategy.
Okay, so amazing insight there. I really like your the revive customers, KPI. I think that's super important. But so I'm actually going to have one more follow-up question for you. So do you typically recommend tracking just the numbers? Because sometimes, in my experience, when you look at your customer base, 4 or 5 customers are probably going to be bringing the majority of the revenue, and 90% of them are going to be doing, let's say, $1,000, $10,000. So if you're simply going to be tracking number, is that still a fair tracking, or do you have to track, you have to segment a little bit, or maybe track in terms of dollars?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Sam. I do think you should be segmenting, and obviously the 80-20 rule would apply here. You have every business typically has identified the most important customers to your future. You certainly want to retain them. I'm of the belief that not all customers should be treated equally. There are customers that cost you more time, cost you more money. Maybe you don't want those customers anymore. So yeah, there could be a true weeding off, and maybe you're looking at not even, how much more profit are you making from that customer that you didn't care if you retained or not. That is, I might increase pricing for difficult customers, and if they decide to stay with me, great. Now I've made more profit out of the challenges that I have to overcome to do business with them. So it is a great point. I think that you have to look at more than just the number of customers, but you should be setting a priority to your different customer levels.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Chris, for that. So I am actually going to change the order a bit, because last time Kira did not get much chance to talk. And I know that, you don't want to go last. So this time, Kira, I'm actually going to give you an opportunity to be able to talk about the measurement. What KPIs do you think are really going to be relevant when it comes to tracking the customer retention across your customer base? And what do you think? How would you create a framework for customer retention?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for that, because I already prepared the speech. Like I don't have anything to add. Yeah, basically, I think that we can divide the KPIs into 2 parts, quantitative and qualitative.
Okay.
So quantitative is what Chris started to talk about. I love those 2 KPIs. And I think measuring customer churn is important, but measuring that in the sense of what that customer profile looks like. I've had the case where the company acquired a lot of customers, spent a lot of money on marketing, and those were B2B, specific size of the companies. But when they looked at the churn, the same profile was actually churning out. So that's where they realized, so they're probably selling to the wrong audience, and they ended up to selling their products to larger customers for more money, more volume. So when you are measuring customer churn, look at the acquisition as well and how that balances out. But I would actually love to point the attention to the qualitative side, because that actually would compensate your marketing spend or reduce your marketing spend. Because of course you need to have amazing service and do that future-proof communication and whatnot, everything that your customers are happy. But then when you will ask for feedback, you will realize that yes, not all customers are equal, and you would be able to pull more feedback and public feedback to actually make the customers market for you. This is called customer advocacy that can reflect in Google reviews, in reviews on your website, on maybe video interviews, whatever, do-it-yourself videos done by your customers, so you don't need to spend your money to do those videos and market them. That's becoming viral. And of course, in the end of the day, you can, spin your retention or loyalty program and ask your customers, your happy customers, to refer additional new customers, their friends, family, whatever your business does, to you. That costs $0, just your attention and your attitude to your customers. So I think qualitative measurement is often missed out. But it's worth looking at, and maybe even going to a marketing company or hiring an intern or asking someone from the company to pay attention to that qualitative aspect, collecting feedback, reworking that in publicly available materials might pay off big time.
Okay, so love the way you opened up this answer in terms of dividing this in quantitative and qualitative. And I have seen sometimes the KPIs would not make any sense, and people are tracking just for no reason, and they just don't mean anything. So obviously the qualitative is important, and I don't know. I mean, see, you did mention a couple of things, a couple of strategies overall from the qualitative perspective. But have you seen any specific sort of KPIs? Because even in case of qualitative, if somebody is watching, they need to hit some sort of metrics to be able to find out, what's working, what's not. So what have you seen in your experience, how to implement the qualitative strategies?
Oh, yeah, simple. If you're looking at Google reviews, just the numbers and the stars and the quality of those reviews, just compare that to the competition, and you can do the whole campaign based on that. And then, of course, this referral rate. So if you can even test that, everything needs to be tested. If you, for example, decide to test out the referral campaign, just apply like the discount code. You see that, online Amazons and of the world are doing that all the time. Just try to do the same. Just apply, something that will help you measure it afterwards. So those two examples, I would say that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, could not agree more. I think reviews could be powerful, and that could be one of the ways of engaging with your customers. And I think Ben and Chris, you guys mentioned that, you have to engage with your customers. And if you're not really engaging on reviews, respond to them, even if they are being super negative. If you respond, then, you are going to be trusted far more, that at least they are willing to admit and accept whatever happened, and they are willing to resolve. Obviously, if you are going to have product problems, they are always going to be there. And let's say if you have serious deficiencies in your problem, but you can at least communicate. So thank you so much, Kira, for that. So Damon, I'm actually going to come to you now, in terms of the measurement framework that you have seen in sort of creating the quality control across all of your reps. Let's say if you have a big customer retention organization.
Well, they've really been discussed. I mean, if you're looking at the biggest thing to start with is understand your churn as the churn, or not using the right words that Chris talked about, because it really is. I have 100 customers today. I had 100 customers last year, and I've added whatever new. I mean, that is the ultimate, and understanding where your revenue came from out of those customers too. Obviously, did you grow? Did you not grow? Because I look at the other thing, that when I'm looking at return customers, and I really understand, am I increasing my sales with those return customers? That's one of the things that we've looked at a lot, is how do I just keep increasing that long-term customer value that you get. So that would be the only one I would really add. As we discussed earlier when Chris was talking about it, you were discussing, we added 30 new customers and we lost some customers out of the year, but what kind of customers did we lose? Were they the ones that we really wanted to lose and it didn't matter, and did we gain the ones that we really wanted to? Because I think as important as it is to retain customers, it's just as important to call out customers that you don't want. And that's very counterintuitive overall the growth. But as someone mentioned on here, those customers take you too much time. They are not, brand advocates, whatever. There's a lot of reasons why you want to get them out, but getting them out allows you to make more money in the current, I believe, too, and the long run. So the qualitative that were discussed, those are some things I think are very important.
Yeah, could not agree more. And I especially like your example about the churn, because when you look at, churn in the pure terms, sometimes you might feel that, that's not good because I'm losing. But I mean, the customers that are going to be really negative, that are really going to jeopardize your brand, you probably really don't want them.
Even if you just look at the potential, right? Because if I drop 30 customers and I knew their potential wasn't going anywhere, and I added 30 customers, and I said, but they're starting here, but they got double the potential in the future. I mean, that's invaluable to know how the ones that are moving out and the ones that are moving in.
Could not agree more. I think, you need to have much deeper understanding of your KPIs. KPIs are great overall in providing some sort of dashboard that, sort of where are the red flag areas, where are the, green flag areas, but you have to be able to dig into them and figure out what's going on, whether your KPIs are the real KPIs that you really want to track or not. So thank you so much, Damon, for that. So Ben, I'm actually going to come to you in terms of the measurement, of the framework that you have seen in case of, B2B and B2C.
Well, as always, this panel is just chock full of people who really know what they're doing. So I don't have tons to actually add to what's going on, other than knowing. I think it's important to not only know what you're measuring, but why you're measuring it. I think everyone's alluding to this, so we can figure out what is the point. Sometimes it is exactly like Damon just described. The potential in the upside. I only have the capability of having 100 customers. I cannot do 101. So I need to optimize the customers that I've got. That is important. Sometimes we're talking about reviews. Kira was talking about reviews. A study came out not too long ago that basically said for any 0.1 star under 4, meaning 3.9, 3.8, every step is 11 to 13% less likely someone is going to do business with you. So it becomes extraordinarily important to go from 3.8 to 3.9 to 4.0. So knowing what you're doing, knowing why you're tracking what you're tracking is as important as just tracking it. Because that also gives you the solution in a lot of cases. Is it more customer advocacy that I need? Is it that I need to actually remove clients? I've had a great couple of experiences where it was actually right-sizing the client with our own products. There's a scenario where a business I was involved in had almost a 50% churn. And we thought that was relatively normal until we started looking at it. And the problem was the customers were using about 50% of what they were buying. So you have customers who are paying, $50,000 a year for something, but only using $20,000, $25,000 for it. So we just dropped them down to the $20,000, $25,000 mark, and they actually ended up starting using more of it. Because it's one thing psychologically when you're only using half. It's a different thing where you're at 90%, same usage, but you're at 90% of what you have capable, and they were buying more, and better yet, they were using the product more. We actually found they ended up increasing their usage by 15%, which, we lost a little money in terms of, going from 50,000 to about 25,000 a year, but they ended up spending more money, and we kept those customers. Churn went down from almost 50% to less than 15%. And that took place over the course of about a year. Another example is I was helping a friend of mine trying to figure out what was going on. He kept getting really bad reviews. He had an Amazon business. This wasn't a consulting thing. It was just trying to help him out, figure it out. Turns out his descriptions had the people buying the wrong product. So tons of people were buying great descriptions. They were not buying the product that they thought they were buying. So they're really upset that it's not working because it's not built for that. So some of that just goes to figuring out what you're tracking and why you're tracking it. So you can put we call it the product purchase alignment. We want to make sure that those two things are in line and you have happy customers. And just the last thing, I just wanted to reiterate what Kira was saying about getting your customers to advocate for you. I mean, I've talked about this numerous times, but stats show 99% of people don't, but 98% of people would if you ask them to. 96% of people rate the most important purchasing decision or most important factor in purchasing decisions the feedback from friends and family. Where did you get that shirt? Where did you buy that car? How do you like that $45 million piece of machinery? All of that is relevant. So the more you can engage your customers to be advocates on your behalf, the better.
Okay, so amazing story. And I am actually going to have follow-up question, and then we are actually going to review Tom's question that he posed, whether we agree with this or not. So Ben, one of the things that I really like about, the example that you mentioned about right-sizing your customer, I have seen big push for this, especially in the enterprise software space, because, they really want you to pay for whatever you are using. A lot of companies are pushing for that, because if you are going to be overpaying, most likely you are not going to be happy. But let's say if you think about the manufacturing or distribution, I don't know if you have seen something similar where they might be either overbuying a product that they might not be using, or they might be buying for the incorrect usage, and they might be complaining because, that's not the intention of the product. So have you seen in the manufacturing distribution industry where, we might have similar scenarios of right sizing the customers?
Yeah, I think my co-panelists are probably better at answering this than I am because of their experience, but I have seen this actually in one instance where, and this comes down to the salesperson actually doing what they're supposed to be doing and figuring out what the customer needs based on where they are now and what their future plans are. What ended up happening is one of my clients several years ago when I was consulting, they bought enough for their expected growth rate. The problem was they didn't have a plan to hit that. They had just been naturally, they started a company, year one, they did this amount, year two, they're 25% higher, year three, they're 25% higher. They're like, well, we can get a great deal. Let's buy enough for a 4-year plan. The problem is they had more or less hit the market cap right there. And the reason for that was the salesperson just said, they want 3 of them, I will sell it to them. And they were actually quite unhappy with that because it was a series of deliveries. They didn't need them all 3 at once. So it was, they get one now, and 6 months later, they get the next one. 6 months later, they get the third one. They tried to cancel the third one, and they had a little bit of pushback. And my client at the time was quite unhappy with the way that went. And I get it. The business has sold a thing. There is a contract and all that. But just by making sure, the salesperson making sure that they were buying what they needed as opposed to what they thought they needed, could have saved a whole lot of headache and a lawsuit and a couple of other things that went on. So that's my one story in that regard.
Okay, amazing. So I'm actually going to open up the panel. If anybody has any follow-up comment in terms of the manufacturing and distribution, if you have seen the push for right-sizing the product and being slightly more ethical, which is my preference always. I mean, you should be really ethical to your customers, even if you are getting a lot of dollars, that will fire back. You have to be super ethical. So have you guys seen the similar push? Have you guys seen similar scenario when you are selling, let's say, the manufactured goods, and sometimes they might be overbuying it. They just don't realize it. Kira, Damon?
Yeah, I can address that from my own perspective. We basically sell software, and we deal with a couple of systems. And I even have that slide that I show every time I speak. So there is software for corporate level companies, and there is software for small and medium businesses. Corporate has very sophisticated features, and it costs a lot. SMB software has less features and it costs less. So many times we had frustrated clients who bought the wrong type of the software, and then they just don't have the time, the resource, the knowledge, or the money to pay those expensive vendors who implement that software, and they are just stuck. They bought something, they cannot use that at all. So this is example from my world, but this is probably the same story across the fold.
Yeah, I agree. So I think the Ben has similar example because I think he was, mentioning in the software world, this is definitely happening. But I don't know, Chris, have you seen in the equipment space, or Damon, have you seen in the manufacturing or distribution space by any chance?
Yeah, I mean, I think your point about being ethical is really important. Transparency in your in whatever product is meeting the requirements that are being asked, right? So it's no different than selecting a software vendor and you have a list of requirements and yes, I have these out of the box and no, I'll have to develop these. Or you want to purchase an expensive, complex piece of equipment and you expect it to do these things. And with these specifications, we can handle this payload at this efficiency level. And you have to be transparent about that. That's how you keep your customers. It goes back to your earlier point, Sam, of building trust. Yep. If you lose trust immediately because you tried to get a bigger sale, really, you're going to struggle to retain that customer in the long term. So those are the points I would add.
Yeah, and that's the same from my experience too. Is when we were selling custom products, whether we were the OEM or we were helping designers design products, it was always about the trust and saying, well, you know, for your application, you really don't need this. Even though it's cool, even though it's really nice, it's not going to get you what you really need to do the whatever you want to accomplish here, and this will accomplish it. And as Chris says, that builds that deeper trust that's going to keep them coming back to you because you didn't take the sale for 25 or however much percentage higher. You got them the right product that does what they really needed it to, regardless of the price. And that's the experiences that I've had, is that the best salespeople are ethical. They understand how to really solve problems rather than sell what they can.
Exactly, could not agree more. And I think Tom's point is about the same point as well. So the contract conversion rate, in my experience, when you are selling the support contract, and if the customers are not really utilizing them, then probably it's a good idea to be able to right size them. And track that metric as well, whether they really need the support or you are simply trying to sell because you are trying to make your bonus and just move away. So I think I don't know if you guys have anything to add there. Anybody?
Yeah, actually, yesterday we've had that conversation with a potential customer who actually provides kind of the same services to their customers, but they're selling just different software. So they were talking to us in the language of like what's acceptable in the industry, but they really didn't need that SLA agreement. So that's how the conversation went. Guys, let's see what you really need. We can, do bank of hours or whatever it is, but let's right size it for your company because we don't see that you need what you think you need. So this is, again, being transparent and honest.
Okay, amazing, guys. So the only thing we can take right now is going to be the closing advice. So Chris, I am actually going to start with you for your closing advice.
Yeah, I had a mentor say to me one time, and it just came up as we were talking, if you're not making money for your company or you're not saving your company money, what are you doing? And I think we can turn this to our customers as well, right? What are you doing to help them make money or save money? And you can also convert money to time. How are you helping them save time or give them more time, right? And when you think about truly solving ways to do that, you are going to retain customers. So I would just share that a bit of advice that I received early in my career.
Could not agree more. You not only have to think about your customers, but their customers as well. The more you think about, their customers, they are going to be super happy. Thank you so much, Chris, for that. Ben, what would be your closing advice?
Yeah, I think it's more of a summary of what we've all been talking about. Is just treat your customers right and figure out what they need and figure out when there's problems, address them. Be honest about it, figure it out, sort it out. And not everyone's going to be happy with it anyway, but you'll find more people will faster, and then you don't have to have that problem again. So, my closing advice is, customers first, but also make sure that they are the right customers.
I agree. Thank you so much, Ben. Damon, what would be your closing advice?
Well, I really think it's listening to your customers. I mean, we talked about it a lot of different ways, but it is listening to them and asking the right questions, because they'll tell you what you need to do. And if you just listen and ask the right questions and get into the real details of the root cause, they'll tell you what you need to do. And then you just need to do it.
Yeah, could not agree more. And truly listening and really delivering, on whatever you promise, not just for the sake of it that, you are simply pretending to listen. So thank you so much, Damon, for that. Kira, what would be your closing advice?
Yeah, I would go with Damon and say, if you want to do just one thing as a takeaway from this conversation, I would say look at your data.
Yeah.
Either you are doing the customer retention activity or not yet. Just look at your data, and that will help you define your next steps or even the strategy.
Love it. Thank you so much. Awesome, guys. So that's it for today. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our e-commerce series, for which we meet every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, and we always pick one topic related to e-commerce. So we are going to be here next week. Don't miss next week's show. On that note, I want to thank everybody for their time and insights.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.